What if everything you believed was just a game? Neil starts to suspect his wife Olivia has been hiding something for a while. Doubts turn into suspicion when he accidentally finds an unfamiliar message on her phone. "I'll see you later, just like we planned. Waiting for you." His heart races as he follows her and sees her with Adam. But that's not all. She's laughing. He's too close. Neil has to do what he fears most. A video that exposes her actions. Olivia and Adam. Are they just professional, or is there something more? And that's not all. What if Olivia isn't the only one with secrets? What will happen when the truth comes out? Asterisk, asterisk. Find out how Neil uncovers this shocking world of betrayal. My unfaithful wife didn't expect her date with her lover would end with my arrival. Neil was sitting in the living room with a cup of coffee, scrolling through the news feed on his phone. It was an ordinary day, and he was enjoying the silence while Olivia was getting ready for another meeting. She was always busy with her affairs, and Neil had grown accustomed to it. "Neil, have you seen my favorite beige scarf?" Olivia peeked out from the bedroom door. "Check the closet near the entrance. I think I saw it there." She nodded, disappearing into another room. A few minutes later, Olivia returned, draping the scarf over her shoulders. "I'll be late today. We're discussing a new project with clients," she said, buttoning her blazer. "All right," Neil replied, not lifting his eyes from the phone. Olivia leaned down to kiss him on the cheek, but Neil noticed her movement was quicker than usual, as if she was in a hurry. "Bye," she threw over her shoulder, walking out the door. Neil stayed behind and went back to his routine. But just an hour later, his thoughts unexpectedly shifted. He went to the kitchen to make more coffee and saw her phone left on the table. It was unusual. Olivia always kept her phone with her, especially during meetings. Neil picked up the device, hesitating. He wasn't the type to check someone else's messages, but something made him pause. His fingers hovered over the screen as a new reminder lit up. The message was short. "Today, as usual, 7 p.m., Starlight Hotel, room 214. Adam." Neil froze, unsure of what it meant. He'd never heard of any hotel meetings in Olivia's schedule. Could it just be a work arrangement? He quickly set the phone down, trying to dismiss his suspicions. Later that day, Neil decided to focus on dinner. He bought ingredients for Olivia's favorite dish, thinking she'd appreciate the gesture. But as the clock neared 7, he remembered the message. His eyes shifted to her phone, still lying in the same spot. Maybe it's just a misunderstanding? Neil whispered to himself, though unease gnawed at him. Neil reasoned that checking wouldn't necessarily mean accusing. He decided to drive to the hotel and see for himself. The Starlight Hotel was located downtown, and the place looked quite upscale. Neil parked his car and walked inside. At the reception desk, he pretended to wait for someone and took a seat in the lobby. He didn't know what to expect, but then he saw the elevator doors open and Olivia stepped out. She wasn't alone. Walking beside her was a tall, confident-looking man. Neil immediately noticed how they glanced at each other. He also saw that Olivia was wearing different clothes than when she had left home. It was odd. They weren't holding hands, but their closeness was unmistakable. Olivia was laughing as if she'd forgotten everything else. Neil thought maybe this was just an important client of Olivia's. She worked as a lawyer in a prestigious firm, often dealing with high-profile people. Still, he couldn't understand why she was holding hands with this man. He decided not to accuse her, but to talk to her when she came home. Neil returned home. Something strange happened, though. Neil sat at home, relaxing, and fell asleep early, not waiting for Olivia. In the morning, she quietly entered the house, changed into her home clothes, and woke Neil, saying, "You fell asleep here last night, so I decided not to wake you." Neil asked, "When did you come home last night?" Olivia replied, "Not too late." But Neil suspected something was off. He would have woken up if she had come home the previous night. He didn't make a scene, simply said nothing. Neil tried to convince himself that everything was fine. Olivia often worked with influential clients, and her words sounded convincing. She was a professional at what she did, so her meetings could sometimes seem unusual. But something about her behavior left an unexplained feeling of unease. After breakfast, Neil decided to set aside thoughts of last night's events and focus on his tasks. He worked from home as an interior designer, which gave him some flexibility. Still, the thought of Olivia quietly returning home wouldn't leave his mind. He decided to look at her phone, which was again lying on the kitchen table while Olivia was occupied. The phone was locked, but a notification on the screen read, "Adam, thanks for last night. You're amazing." Neil felt his heart race. He quickly put the phone back. Maybe it's just gratitude for professional help, he thought, but his suspicions deepened. Later that day, during lunch, Neil tried to collect his thoughts. He didn't want to accuse Olivia outright. They were sitting at the table when Neil decided to bring it up. "Olivia, did you meet with Adam yesterday?" he asked. "Yes, as I told you. This is a very delicate case, Neil. Adam is my client, and he's been wanting to divorce his wife for a long time. He knows she's cheating on him and has proof, but he's afraid of her." "It's my duty as a lawyer," Olivia replied calmly. "This could be a huge blow to both his and her reputations. They're prominent business people, and he doesn't want to make this public. That's why we meet secretly at this hotel. I didn't even want to tell you about it. He pays me very well, and I need to help him with this," Olivia continued. "I see. But why does he send you messages like, 'You're amazing'?" Neil looked her in the eyes. Olivia smiled, but there was a hint of irritation in her voice. "Neil, he's just grateful. You know how clients can be. Sometimes they exaggerate." "There's nothing going on between us," she said, taking a sip of coffee. "You don't need to worry." Neil nodded, but wasn't satisfied with her answer. He decided to check if everything was as she claimed. The next day, Olivia once again mentioned that she had a meeting with Adam at the Starlight Hotel. Neil, hiding his true intentions, said he had errands to run in the city. As soon as Olivia left, he followed her. At the hotel, he saw Olivia entering the elevator with the same man. They looked calm, but their glances betrayed an intimacy. Neil decided to wait for their return. An hour later, they came out of the elevator. Olivia was laughing, and Adam briefly placed his hand on her back. It wasn't long, but it was enough to raise new questions for Neil. He felt a wave of suspicion but decided not to act impulsively. At home, Olivia behaved as usual. She was warm and caring, as if nothing unusual had happened. Neil didn't bring up the topic that evening but started thinking about how to uncover the truth. The next day, while Olivia was in the shower, Neil decided to look at her phone again. He found several messages from Adam. Most were formal, but one stood out, "Hope you feel as amazing as you did yesterday." When Olivia came out of the shower, Neil asked, "Olivia, why haven't you told me more about this case? I feel like you're hiding something." She looked at him with slight irritation. "Neil, I've already explained everything. This is work. Why are you so fixated on this? Don't you trust me?" "I do trust you, but I still want to understand what's going on. You keep meeting with him, and it looks strange." Olivia sighed. "If you want, I can tell you more, but it's unethical. I can't disclose the details of a client's case." Neil decided not to push further, but his suspicions remained. A few days later, he followed Olivia again. This time, she went to a restaurant where she met Adam. Neil sat nearby and watched them have dinner together. Their conversation seemed warm, not strictly professional. After dinner, they left the restaurant together, and Neil saw them get into the same car. Neil returned home and began pondering how to gather definitive proof. He realized that without concrete evidence, he couldn't change anything. In the following days, Olivia started taking more time off work, reducing her caseload. Her attitude toward Neil gradually shifted, which didn't go unnoticed. They used to spend evenings together, discussing their days, but now Olivia often distanced herself, finding excuses to be alone. One day, Olivia invited her friend Nicole over to their house without informing Neil. When Neil walked into the kitchen, he overheard part of their conversation. "Now I have more free time," Olivia was saying. "I'm only taking a few clients. I'm working with Adam." "Are you serious?" Nicole sounded surprised. "Adam is a well-known businessman, and his wife is cheating on him?" "Yes, it's a complicated situation," Olivia replied. "I'm helping him, and he pays well." Neil walked closer, smiling. "You haven't told me this much about him." Olivia looked flustered. "It's already hard enough at work. Don't make it worse." Neil didn't like her tone, but he held back. "You need to take more breaks." "Oh yes, definitely," Nicole added. After this incident, Neil started noticing other changes. Olivia spent more time out of the house, citing work meetings. She often stayed out late, and when she returned, she looked tired but content. Her phone was always with her, and she reacted nervously to any attempts by Neil to touch it. One evening, when Olivia was once again staying late, Neil decided to call her. "Hi, darling. Are you going to be home soon?" "Hi, Neil. Sorry, I'm staying late at work. A lot to do." "I see. I'll wait for you." After hanging up, Neil felt uneasy. His intuition told him something was wrong. He decided to check her words. Neil knew where Olivia's office was, so he decided to go there. Arriving at the building, he saw that all the windows were dark. The office was closed. Neil's heart began to race. He decided to wait. An hour later, he saw Olivia coming out of a nearby cafe with Adam. They were laughing and seemed very close. Neil felt a wave of anger, but he decided not to make any hasty conclusions. The next morning, during breakfast, Neil tried to start a conversation. "How did your meeting go yesterday?" "Everything's fine," Olivia answered, avoiding his gaze. "A lot of work." Neil decided not to press her, but his suspicions only grew. Neil started noticing that Olivia was hiding her phone more often. Her behavior was raising doubts, but he decided not to pressure her. One morning, when she was in the bathroom, Olivia's phone was left on the kitchen counter. Neil noticed the screen flicker, showing a message. He hesitated, but curiosity got the best of him. The message on the screen was from a contact saved as A. "Thank you for last night. It was wonderful. Hope you like the gift." Neil noticed a box on the windowsill that Olivia seemed to be hiding. When Olivia came back, Neil pretended nothing had happened. But the suspicion was growing in his mind. At dinner, he decided to ask casually, "How's everything with your client, Adam?" He asked, trying to appear calm. "Everything's fine," Olivia replied, slightly flustered. "The case is complicated, but we're making progress." "He seems like a generous client," Neil said, smiling. "Or is that just my imagination?" Olivia looked away. "He does pay well, but it's just business." The next day, Neil decided to stay home and wait for the right moment to check the box. When Olivia left for the store, he went to the windowsill and opened it. Inside was an expensive piece of jewelry, an elegant diamond necklace. Attached to it was a note. "For the most beautiful woman who deserves the best. A." Neil felt his heart tighten, but he decided not to say anything. Instead, he put the necklace back and acted as if he knew nothing. That evening, he again tried to start a conversation. "What did you do today?" Neil asked as they were having dinner. "Went shopping," Olivia said, smiling. "How about you? How was your day?" "Nothing special. Worked and cleaned up a bit at home," he replied. Olivia seemed relaxed, but Neil felt she was hiding something. The next morning, he decided to take action and learn more. He asked Olivia to drive him to work, explaining that his car needed repairs. She agreed but seemed a little concerned. Neil got out a few blocks early and discreetly followed her. Olivia stopped at the hotel where they had already discussed meetings with Adam. Neil decided not to go inside, but to just observe. Olivia went inside, and almost immediately came out with Adam. They were laughing and looked like there was more between them than just business. Neil realized it was time to do something. When Olivia came home, he was calm. "How was your day?" he asked. "Fine. A lot of work," she answered, avoiding his gaze. "Did you meet with Adam?" Neil asked, looking her straight in the eyes. Olivia seemed startled, but quickly regained her composure. "Yes, it was a short meeting. We were discussing documents." Neil nodded, not showing his true emotions. That evening, when Olivia went to bed, Neil checked her phone again. This time, he found even more messages from Adam, confirming his suspicions. "Can't wait to see you again," Adam had written. The next day, Neil decided to talk to Olivia, but she seemed like she wanted to say something herself. "Neil, I want you to know that I really appreciate your support," she began. "Is this about Adam?" Neil asked, interrupting her. Olivia looked stunned, but quickly composed herself. "Yes, he's going through a lot, and I'm trying to help him." "Neil, I want to ask you something important," she started. "What is it?" Neil picked up his coffee cup and sat down across from her. Her serious tone intrigued him. "It's about Adam. He asked me to help him, and I thought maybe you could help too." What exactly does he need help with? Neil raised an eyebrow, feeling that this conversation might be unusual. Olivia sighed, as if preparing to tell him something difficult. His wife seems to have lost all boundaries. She's brought her lovers into their home, and Adam just can't take it anymore. He told her he'll find somewhere else to live, and even hinted that he might live with another woman. He hopes that will make her change. Neil listened carefully, sensing that this was only part of the story. "So what do you want from me?" he asked, trying to hide his suspicion. "Adam wants to stay with us for a few days," Olivia said, looking him directly in the eyes. "He's willing to pay $10,000 for it. He doesn't want to stay alone in a hotel. He says it's better to be with friends." Neil was surprised. The offer seemed absurd, but the amount was too tempting to turn down. "With us? But we're not friends with him," he repeated, trying to buy some time to think. "And what is he going to do here? He won't be hitting on you, right? This is just his game for his wife, isn't it?" "Of course, it's just a game. I know we're not friends with him, but he's really nice. We could become friends," Olivia quickly replied. "He just wants to show his wife that he can be happy without her. Adam will stay in the guest room. Don't worry, everything will be fine." Neil looked at her, trying to figure out if there was something hidden behind her words. But then he remembered the $10,000. "All right," he said, nodding. "Let him come. The money will definitely help." That evening, Adam arrived with a small suitcase. He looked confident and a bit too polite. "Thank you for having me," he said, shaking Neil's hand. "You have no idea how much this means to me." "No problem," Neil replied, smiling. "The main thing is that everything goes smoothly." Adam settled into the guest room and quickly made himself comfortable. He was overly friendly, joked, and interacted as if he were an old family friend. Neil watched him with some caution, but decided not to jump to conclusions. By the next day, Neil noticed that Adam and Olivia were spending too much time alone together. They laughed, whispered, and once Neil saw Adam touch her shoulder. This stirred an inner sense of unease, but he decided not to bring it up just yet. One evening, when Olivia went to the kitchen, Neil stayed in the room with Adam. A brief pause filled the air, which was broken by Neil. "How long do you plan on staying here?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "A couple of days, no more," Adam replied. "I know it might be uncomfortable. The important thing is that it doesn't cause problems for us with Olivia," Neil remarked, looking him straight in the eyes. "Of course not," Adam replied quickly, but Neil noticed a slight tension in his voice. The next morning, as Neil was getting ready for work, he heard Olivia talking on the phone with someone. Her voice was soft, but Neil managed to catch a few words. "We have to be careful. Neil doesn't suspect anything, but I want to see you again soon." These words convinced him that something was wrong. He decided to wait and gather more information to act confidently. Neil realized that Olivia wasn't talking to Adam, but someone else. Maybe she wasn't meeting only with Adam at the hotel. That evening, when everyone was home, Neil brought up the subject of the money. "Adam, you promised to pay for these days. Maybe we can settle this now?" Adam seemed a bit nervous, but quickly pulled out his checkbook and wrote a check. "Here," he said, handing the check to Neil. "Thanks again for your hospitality." Neil took the check and examined it carefully. The amount was correct, but it didn't ease his suspicions. That evening, when Olivia thought Neil was already asleep, she went to the living room. Neil, being in his room, heard their conversation. "Did he understand anything?" Adam asked. "No, everything is going according to plan," Olivia replied. "Just a little longer, and we'll be able to finish this." Neil decided not to go to work the next day. Olivia went to her office, and Adam stayed home. Neil decided to talk to Adam. They talked about work, and then Neil started asking, "Why don't you leave your wife if she keeps cheating on you?" Adam said, "It's not that simple. She's just awful. She'll take revenge on me. But your wife is really nice, funny, talented, and she helps me a lot. I hope this will all end soon." Neil asked, "Do you know if she's working with anyone else?" Adam didn't want to answer right away, but eventually said, "I don't want to get into your relationship, but I saw her with some young guy." Neil felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. What he had just learned shocked him and made him think. He decided to continue the conversation to understand how serious this really was. "Who is this guy?" Neil asked, trying to stay calm. Adam looked at him carefully, as if hesitating whether to continue talking. I don't know. I didn't ask him. But, from what I saw, it seems like they're on good terms, maybe even romantic ones, but I'm not sure. She looked as calm and confident as ever next to him. I don't want to talk about this anymore. It's not my business, Adam said, lowering his gaze and heading to the kitchen. Neil stayed in the room, thinking about what he had just heard. His thoughts were mixed. Why hadn't Olivia told him about this guy? Who was he, and why hadn't she mentioned him? As Neil sat there, contemplating Adam's words, Olivia returned home in the evening. She looked as usual, smiling and calm, but Neil felt something had changed. Hi, darling. How are you? Olivia asked as she approached him. I'm good. I talked to Adam a bit today, Neil replied, trying to seem calm. Olivia seemed not to notice and smiled. And what's new? She asked, pouring herself a cup of coffee. He said something interesting about you, Neil said, sitting at the table. Olivia froze, but quickly returned to her usual demeanor. And what did he say? She asked, as if nothing had happened. Neil heard her voice, but his heart was beating faster. He didn't have proof, but what he had learned from Adam could be just the beginning. He mentioned seeing you with some young guy. Is something wrong? Neil asked, trying to stay as calm as possible. Olivia paused, but kept up an air of indifference. It's just a client. You know I work with a lot of people. Nothing special, she replied, not meeting Neil's gaze. Neil couldn't believe her words. She was trying to stay calm, but he could feel that something was wrong. Really? I think this doesn't look so simple, he said, looking at her. Olivia sighed and sat next to him. Neil, you're overthinking. It's just work. Nothing more, she explained, trying to change the subject. Neil remained silent and decided not to reveal his cards just yet. He realized he had to be careful not to miss any important details. The guy Adam mentioned could be more than just a client. The next day, when Olivia went off to work, Neil decided to act. He knew he had to be smart to get to the truth. He contacted a few of his acquaintances to learn more about this mysterious young man. It turned out he wasn't just a client, but an old friend of Olivia's. Neil decided to wait a couple more days, observing Olivia's and Adam's behavior. And one evening, when he began to notice strange hints again, he decided to act. He decided to talk to Adam while he was still at their house to discuss the situation. You know, I've been thinking a little. I saw something else that bothered me, Neil said, sitting at the table and looking at Adam. Adam raised an eyebrow. What exactly do you mean? Neil held his gaze for a few seconds to emphasize the importance of what he was about to say. I found out that the guy Olivia was with has more of a relationship with her than you think, Neil said, looking Adam straight in the eyes. Adam briefly frowned. You don't understand, he said, leaning closer. I know she's playing you, but I can't do anything about it. She knows how to manipulate people. And I just don't know how to deal with her. Because when she finds out I'm leaving, she'll destroy me. Neil heard these words, but decided not to rush to conclusions. You know we're not alone here. If you want to change something, maybe we should try to find a solution together, Neil said. Adam nodded, but his eyes showed despair. From this, Neil understood that they were both caught in a trap. Neil felt his doubts and anger mixing as he sat across from Adam. He wasn't ready for a direct confrontation, but his intuition told him something was wrong. Olivia, his wife, had been acting strangely for a while, and these unfortunate, casual hints only confirmed his suspicions. I can't ignore this anymore, Adam, Neil began, calmly but with a tense voice. Honestly, I thought something was going on between you and Olivia. I even thought she might be cheating on me with you. Adam, who had been calm up to that point, noticeably became nervous. His hands shook, and he paused for a few seconds, locking eyes with Neil. Of course, Neil noticed this reaction, but decided not to jump to conclusions. What are you talking about? Adam replied, trying to maintain his composure. You don't know how I feel about her? I would never. You know I respect your wife, but I could never do that. Neil didn't answer immediately. He calmly looked at Adam and pulled a small wrapped package from his bag, which he had found in Olivia's closet. He suddenly remembered the gift when he woke up in the morning and decided this could be an important point in their conversation. Here's what I found in her closet, Neil said, placing the package on the table in front of Adam. Adam looked at him with obvious surprise, then quickly turned his gaze to the package. Neil pulled out an elegantly packaged box with an exquisite diamond necklace inside. It looked very elegant and clearly cost quite a bit of money. "Is this from you?" Neil asked, looking at Adam. Adam clearly felt trapped. He glanced at the necklace for a moment, but quickly turned his gaze back to Neil. "No, I just wanted to help her. Olivia, she's very important to my family business, and I want her to finish what she's doing for me quickly," Adam said, trying to justify himself. "You understand? I don't want this to look wrong, but I'm doing this so she can finally get rid of my wife, so this can all end." Neil listened carefully, but these words didn't fully convince him. He felt Adam was trying to find an explanation that sounded more acceptable, but it was too simple for such a situation. It seemed like he was just trying to justify his actions and avoid questions. "You really want me to believe that?" Neil asked, gripping the table. "That you just want her to do her job, and that's it? But I see how you interact, how she looks at you. And this gift? How do you explain this? It seems like something more than just helping." Adam looked at Neil and shrugged before responding. "I know, it looks bad, but if you find out the truth, you'll understand why I'm doing this. I don't want to offend you or your wife. I'm just trying to solve my situation. You'd better check that guy out. Maybe there's something between him and her." Neil thought that these words sounded too convenient. Maybe Adam was right, or maybe it was just another excuse. But he couldn't be sure what the truth was. Neil fell silent for a few minutes, trying to figure out the situation. He knew he had to be careful. Direct confrontations could lead to even more chaos, and he didn't want that. He decided not to make a scene, though deep down he felt the truth wasn't as simple. "All right, Adam, but if you're so concerned about your situation, why not try to find another way? If Olivia is really helping you, can't this be done without interfering in our personal relationship?" Neil said, calmly studying Adam's reaction. Adam sighed, looking exhausted, as if he had been carrying this burden for a long time. "I can't change anything. It's complicated, and I don't know how it will all turn out. But if we move slowly, it will all end. Trust me, I'm doing this for us," Adam replied, and his voice sounded convincing, but Neil noticed his gaze was still uncertain. Neil understood that now was not the time to make conclusions. His suspicions might be true, but there wasn't enough evidence to talk about it openly. He decided to observe the situation. Now he knew he had to be vigilant and watch how Olivia's and Adam's behavior would change. Neil decided it was important to wait for new details that could confirm his assumptions. That evening, when Olivia came home, Neil felt that this wasn't the end. She was too calm, but what she was really hiding, he didn't know yet. He would have to find more evidence to uncover the truth. Neil felt how slowly but steadily his doubts were turning into suspicions. At first, he understood that he needed to learn more about Adam, but after meeting him again, these doubts began to grow inside him. He decided that he needed to check the situation with Olivia to understand what was really going on. Since Adam had told him that the young man Olivia was often in contact with might be the cause of his concerns, Neil decided to check personally how their relationship really looked. The next day, Neil went for a little walk. He didn't let Olivia sense that something was wrong, just went on a trip to observe her from a distance. He went to work in a nearby cafe and waited for her to leave for a meeting with the young man Adam had mentioned. Neil sat in the corner and began watching her every move. He wasn't sure exactly what he was expecting, but he decided he had to keep an eye on her. He watched as Olivia met with the guy and spent almost the whole day waiting for something that would allow him to draw conclusions. Olivia and the young man, who looked like her colleague, entered the cafe. They sat at a table, talking about work, and it was obvious to Neil. Their conversation didn't seem romantic at all. They were discussing professional matters, particularly some work difficulties and new opportunities. Nothing special, no hints, no moments that would suggest anything more than just a work relationship. He observed how Olivia laughed at his jokes, but it all seemed completely innocent. After a long period of observation, Neil began to understand that maybe Adam had just lied to him. There was nothing suspicious in Olivia's behavior. She didn't look like she was hiding anything. Neil began to doubt that everything Adam had told him could be true. Maybe Adam was trying to cover up another truth, and this was just a way to deflect suspicion from himself. That evening, Neil came home and decided to talk to Olivia. He tried to maintain a calm demeanor, but the questions that had been bothering him wouldn't let him rest. He asked her about the young man she had met, and if there was anything more between them than just a professional relationship. "Olivia, I just want to understand this," he began, trying to be careful. "I was really worried about this guy Adam told me about. You know, he said that you have some romantic relationship with this young guy. Maybe you could explain to me what's going on between you two." Olivia smiled at Neil as if there were no doubts at all. "Oh, he's just a guy working on one of my projects. I'm helping him, that's all. Nothing special, just work. Adam probably imagines things too much. He's had a lot on his plate, and I've been trying not to interfere in his personal life. It's just helping, nothing more." Neil felt there was no lie in her words. He trusted her, and what she said seemed truthful. She didn't seem suspicious at all, and he began to realize that maybe this whole situation was just Adam's fabrication. But then Olivia added another detail that slightly confused Neil. "By the way, Adam asked me to come to his place to help him describe the property in their big house," she said, sitting on the couch. "His wife went somewhere, and he wants me to help him with some paperwork. It'll take a couple of days. He thanked me for helping with some issues. I think it'll be a good opportunity to discuss everything with him again. Don't worry, I'll just be working." Neil heard these words and again thought about what was going on. It seemed strange that Olivia was so calmly going to his place for a couple of days. He became curious again about whether she was hiding something from him, but he didn't want to seem intrusive and decided to trust her. He couldn't keep his suspicions without evidence. "All right, if you think it's important for work, I won't object," Neil replied. "Just be careful. You know how I worry about all of this." Olivia smiled, placed her hand on his shoulder, and her words seemed sincere. "Thank you, Neil. You're always so caring. I know everything will be fine." Neil wasn't sure about his feelings. He still couldn't shake off the situation with Adam and Olivia. He decided to keep an eye on everything happening. Maybe Olivia was really just working with Adam, but what also intrigued Neil was why Adam invited her to his place when his wife was away. Neil thought that it might be a good idea to continue observing in the near future. Olivia left the house early the next morning, leaving Neil at home, taking care of ordinary tasks. She said she was going to Adam's place to help him with the property in his big house, to make a description so he could sue his wife for it. Everything sounded logical, but Neil felt a strange unease that he couldn't shake off. He decided to follow her, even though he didn't understand what exactly he was looking for. It was a step he didn't want to take, but his gut feeling told him that he had to learn the truth. Neil waited for a long time near the house, sitting in his car at a distance, trying not to attract attention. He watched as Olivia arrived at Adam's place, got out of the car, and walked into the house. Time passed, and nothing suspicious happened. They spent a few hours in the house, and Neil couldn't figure out what he was expecting. But something about the calmness seemed unnatural to him. He realized that he needed to make a choice. Either continue sitting in the car and observing, or approach the house to find out what was really happening. This was a decision that made his heart race faster. He got out of the car and carefully approached Adam's large house, hiding among the trees so as not to be seen. After a few minutes of observation, he saw Olivia and Adam sitting at the table in the living room. It seemed like they were discussing some documents. Nothing suspicious, nothing that could hint at infidelity. Neil stood, watching, still unsure of what to do. But then something changed. Olivia smiled, and Adam looked at her with a gaze that Neil couldn't understand. It was a look full of closeness, trust, and something more. Neil stayed in place, his heart racing. He couldn't ignore this, so he decided to get closer. He began moving towards the window, peering through the thin curtains, trying not to be noticed. And suddenly, he saw Adam hug Olivia, and they began to kiss romantically. It was immediate and natural, but for Neil, it was a blow he didn't expect. Adam and Olivia were kissing. Neil couldn't believe what he was seeing. He felt his heart tighten with pain. Everything he had gone through, everything he suspected, had become a reality. He stood there, not knowing what to do. His thoughts were a jumble. He couldn't take his eyes off the scene in front of him. A few minutes into the kiss, everything became clear to Neil. Olivia wasn't just working with Adam. They were together. They weren't just helping each other with paperwork, but they had something more. And that was something Neil couldn't and didn't want to understand. But it was true. His wife had cheated on him with Adam. And Adam had been very clever, simply making Neil believe that Olivia was with some other young guy. He didn't know how much time passed while he stood there, watching a scene he couldn't change. He gathered his thoughts, his heart still pounding in his chest. He needed to leave. And quickly. He couldn't watch this anymore, but he also couldn't just leave without knowing the truth to the end. He quietly moved away from the window and returned to his car, choosing not to cause any more suspicion. He didn't know if he wanted to talk to Olivia, or if it would be too painful for him. He couldn't just sit there, observing and creating scenarios in his head. The truth had become clear. Neil understood that he wanted all of this to end. A few days later, Neil and Olivia were sitting at home together. She had returned after a few days spent at Adam's place. She looked calm, and he still couldn't forget what he had seen. Olivia noticed that Neil was acting a little differently than usual. "You look upset, Neil. Is everything okay?" she asked, sitting next to him. He looked at her, trying to hide the pain he felt inside. "I'm fine," he replied, though his voice still carried a cold tone. "Just a little tired." They sat in silence for a few minutes. Olivia, not noticing anything unusual, began talking about her trip to Adam's. "Adam was really grateful for my help," Olivia continued. "We described the property. He said he could take care of everything without me, but I was really happy to help. Thanks for letting me go." "I'm glad you had a good time, Olivia. Did you settle everything with Adam?" "Not yet, but we're in the final stages. I want to rest a bit now, and tonight he invited me to dinner. We want to celebrate this, to mark the success, and finally, he'll be free from his wife." "All right," Neil said, but as Olivia was resting, he saw at what time and in which restaurant they would meet. Neil already had all the evidence of his wife Olivia's betrayal with Adam, but he was planning an interesting revenge. Neil sat in his office, watching the video he had made a few days ago. The footage showed Olivia and Adam spending time together, laughing, hugging. Neil felt a cold sense of betrayal overwhelm him. Olivia, his wife, was cheating on him with a man he had once considered a friend. And this was something he had to endure. But Neil wouldn't be who he was if he didn't think about how to turn the situation to his advantage. No violence, no aggression. He decided to act intelligently. He found Adam's wife through social media. She was still with him, and it seemed their divorce hadn't happened yet. "This is my chance," thought Neil, sitting at the computer. He sent her a message detailing her husband's betrayal with Olivia. He also specified the exact restaurant where Olivia and Adam would be that evening. Neil was sure that this time, he would do everything right. In the evening, he watched as Olivia left the house, carrying her bag and wearing the same dress she looked so attractive in. She had no idea that this time, her plan would end completely differently. Neil followed her. In the restaurant, everything seemed perfect. Olivia and Adam were sitting at a table, enjoying champagne and having a pleasant conversation. They laughed and kissed, not noticing how the people around them were watching them. Olivia was drinking champagne, enjoying how easily she could get what she wanted. Adam was charming, and it seemed everything was going according to her plan. She heard a call on her phone and looked at the screen. It was Neil. Olivia felt her heart grow heavy, but she quickly put the phone down, as if nothing had happened. But then, just as she and Adam were about to finish their evening, another man approached their table. It was Neil. He didn't say a word. He simply placed his mobile phone in front of them, showing a video that captured their moments together. Photos of them laughing, hugging. A video of them kissing. "What does this mean, Neil?" Olivia asked, looking at him in confusion. Adam jumped in his seat. His expression changed as soon as he saw the photos and video. He immediately tried to justify himself. Are you filming us? How could you do this?" Adam said, unable to believe what was happening. But Neil just tilted his head back and looked at him with a cold stare. "This isn't all, Adam," he said, keeping his voice steady. "I'm not the only one seeing your adventures. Here's who else has come." At that moment, a woman walked up to their table. Adam instantly turned pale, realizing it was his wife, who certainly didn't know about his affair. What are you doing here?" Adam said as his face turned even whiter. Do you still want to explain something, Adam? The woman said. I found out everything from Neil. All these years, you've been lying to me, and I thought you were faithful. Turns out, you're the one who's been cheating. Olivia watched the scene unfold. She couldn't believe her eyes, even though she herself was guilty of all of this. She felt like a traitor, but at the same time, she still couldn't let go of the feelings she had for Adam. I just don't understand why you did this, Adam, Olivia said, her voice calm but tinged with pain. You assured me that you wanted to leave your wife, and now it all turns out to be a lie. Adam, now completely disoriented, couldn't find words to defend himself. His world was crumbling before his eyes. Neil watched the scene with a sense of satisfaction. This was his revenge. He didn't want to be crude. He didn't want to see physical aggression. He wanted the truth to reveal itself. And today, his plan had worked. I told you, Olivia, that everything would fall into place, Neil said, turning back to Olivia. You thought for a long time that no one would notice. But everything eventually comes to light. That evening became not only difficult for everyone, but also a valuable lesson. Olivia and Adam realized that infidelity doesn't go unpunished. All secrets have a way of coming out. And so, in this unexpected encounter, it wasn't just Neil's revenge that emerged, but also the triumph of justice. What would you do if, in one moment, you found out your wife was cheating on you with her client, and then learned that you weren't the only one trapped in their betrayal?